wanted to start, though, with you just telling me a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So I'm from Northwest Iowa, was raised in O'Brien County in Sutherland on a farm that my family's owned since the 1870s. Graduated from high school in the early 90s, went to West Point, and then served in the Army for a few years. Had an opportunity to serve our nation again when our country was attacked during 9/11, when I joined the intelligence community and served overseas. I eventually started a business that I've been running for most of the past 10 years, and I decided to become involved in local politics, or rather national level politics, here in Iowa when I learned more about our current Congressman Virgil Feedster's voting record and how, in my opinion, I believe he's failed to represent the conservative interests and the principles of the people here.
And so that was going to be my one of my next things, but I wanted to start with, why you're running exactly. You mentioned Feedstra a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, I think I first learned about Congressman Feedster's voting record when I learned about the carbon capture pipelines that are projected to be built here in western Iowa, specifically related to their efforts to enact eminent domain against Century Farms like my family's, which I think isn't just it's not just unconstitutional, but it's also un-American, right? The idea that a private company could compel the government to seize another private entity's land. So I wanted to fight against that, and then the more I dug into that issue and I started to learn about our current Congress's voting record and how he's voted really just for a continuous expansion of the federal government, both its debt, its budget, and its power. Has voted against almost every amendment in the Bill of Rights, whether it's the first, the second, the fourth, the fifth. I think that's wrong, and I think the people of Iowa deserve better. So I was waiting for somebody else to run against him. And when it became obvious by the end of last year that nobody else was, I decided to throw my hat in the ring myself.
And so you mentioned those carbon capture pipelines. That's something that's an issue that we see, statehouse people talking about, but we don't see, our congressmen and women talking about it as much. Is that something you feel like could be dealt with at the federal level?
Yeah, I think it could be. Well, it should be, right, because it's unconstitutional per the Fifth Amendment. I would rather see it dealt with here at home in Iowa, or better yet, to have the market come up with a better solution. I think that what's really telling is that 4 out of 5 Iowans in a poll that the One Register ran last year are opposed to the use of eminent domain for this purpose, right? We're not talking about an interstate highway or a school that has a clear public purpose. This is just a private company trying to make a lot of money through tax credits. And most people don't want to see that. And yet, many members of our state Senate and certainly all 4 of our congressmen here in Iowa are fighting very hard to enable this company to enact eminent domain. I think it's wrong. Most people in Iowa think it's wrong, and I think it speaks to how poor our representation is here, that they're acting against the will of the people.
And kind of going back a little bit, talking about some of your past experience, how do you feel like your past experience will help you if you are elected to the seat?
Yeah, well, I think I've got a strong record of national service, right, both in the military and the intelligence community. And I think that's instilled in me a lot of principles that will serve me well in public service for a third time. I think I did run a business for a long time, and I'm still an owner in that business. And as anybody who's ever been an entrepreneur will tell you, there's no harder test. In terms of just I think the stamina and the principles that you need to represent the people in Congress. So I think I'm very well prepared to do this job.
And as a business owner, I'm sure you're well aware of the inflation and things like that going on. If you are elected, what's kind of your idea on how you handle the inflation?
Well, look, you can look at our largest government expenditures at the moment, which are really driving that inflation, right? Because we currently have a federal budget deficit or fiscal deficit that's $34 trillion and adding $1 trillion every 100 days. And that's because our federal government is currently making around a little over $3.5 trillion a year, but spending over $7 trillion, right? That's unsustainable. And most of that comes down to entitlements like Social Security, our military budget, health care for sure, interest payment on that debt. So how do you pare all that back? I think we need to come up with meaningful ways to reduce the burden of Social Security. I think our healthcare industry, as we saw during COVID, needs a complete rethink. in terms of how we can streamline it, provide better services to people while trimming the costs. Look, I used to sell, my company used to sell to the federal government, to the Department of Defense, and it was a commonly held belief in my industry that you could cut the Defense Department's headcount in half, and that organization would probably operate better and provide a better service to the American people. I think we can say that about just almost every government agency at this point, and I think we need to cut the federal government's budget and headcount in half. Vivek Ramaswamy, who ran for president, agrees with me, and that's why he's endorsed me in my campaign, and I intend to work toward that goal when I'm in Congress.
And so one of those issues that you mentioned when you were talking about inflation was that Social Security, and this was one thing whenever all the presidential candidates were here running, it kind of kept getting brought up in conversation. Whether some believe they should get rid of it or there should be a new kind of proposal for it. What's kind of your feeling on that?
Yeah, I think my feeling is I think Social Security is one of the biggest scams the government ever created, right? So, for example, if I pay into Social Security my entire life and I start drawing benefits at 62, if I unexpectedly pass away at 63, my family doesn't get that benefit, all that unused benefit that I paid in my whole life. It goes to the government, right? And then we had instances in the past where presidents like George W. Bush borrowed hundreds of billions of dollars from Social Security to fund the Iraq War. This isn't like a gigantic pension or anything that's built for the benefit of the American people. If we had that, we would be able to pass along that unused benefit to our descendants when we die. We wouldn't allow the government to borrow from it. I think that your average American could just deposit their savings into a high-yield savings account and receive a much better return than Social Security provides. So I would be in favor of allowing those who've already paid into this system to continue to receive that benefit. Certainly our older Americans could. But for the younger generations, I would like to see some sort of retirement savings account. Maybe it's government-backed, government-guaranteed, similar to FDIC, where they can deposit that into a high-yield savings account or some other safe investment at their own discretion, take responsibility for their own retirement. And I think they'll receive a much higher return than the government will provide. They'll get to receive the full benefit of it, and it'll be a much reduced burden on the federal government.
Sure. And one thing that we're actually seeing go through Congress right now, or they're trying to work on, is that farm bill.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that? I know it's a wide range of issues in that.
Right. Yeah, look, unfortunately, like the farm bill, it's supposed to be renewed every 5 years, right? And it's been locked in negotiation in Washington, D.C. for well over a year now. The problem with the farm bill is I think it's misnamed, right? Maybe 10 to 15% of the contents of the farm bill actually apply to farmers, and the vast majority is basically deals with entitlements, and it deals with SNAP payments for lower income households, deals with welfare. Those aren't really issues that pertain to farmers, like the vast majority of the legislation. I think that all those issues are important to a point, but I think that, look, I would like to see farmers in Iowa get the assistance they need. If that means, basically stripping out the agricultural specific elements of the farm bill and creating a new bill, I think that might be a better way and a faster way for Iowa to get the clarity that it needs for the agricultural industry to thrive.
Sure. And another thing that's big is kind of driving, at least the GOP side of the election, is immigration, the southern border.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, like it's the number one issue I hear when I'm out on the campaign trail, right? I think bar none, it's everybody wants to know about what the government can do or what Congress can do, since our current White House, our current administration, is actively working to keep the border open, right? Which we've never thought we'd see that here in America. So I would like to see a hard closure of the border in the immediate term. I think we definitely need that, but we also have to do something about the, somewhere between 20 to 30 million illegal immigrants we have in this country. Many, if not all of these people need to go back to their points of origin. So, I am in favor of removing the incentives that keep them here. I don't think mass deportations are realistic. But I think if we remove the financial incentives that brought them here in the first place, the market will do the work for us. So I'd be in favor of an amendment, a constitutional amendment that that removes citizenship by birthright, which means that any child who's born in America is automatically an American citizen. Only one of every 6 countries in the world do that. I don't know why we continue to, when we're supposedly the most advanced country in the world, economically advanced at least. I believe that we should defund or withhold federal funding to any NGOs that continue to violate our laws by facilitating the flow of illegal immigrants into our country, both religious and political NGOs. And I am in favor of harsh penalties for companies, for example, Tyson Foods right here in Iowa, which, by the way, just laid off 1,200 workers in Perry so they could hire illegal immigrants in another state. I'd be in favor of harsh penalties for any companies that knowingly hire illegal immigrants. I think we can talk about of amending or fixing our immigration policy to make it easier for I guess like we'll call them low-skilled labor workers from other countries to come work here for, say, a few months or even a few years, with stricter controls and accountability and making sure that they pay into the system. I'm certainly not allowing them to vote, but I'm in favor of that. I think that we need that labor, but I think we need to do that in a controlled and safe manner.
And so there's also talk about, that the immigration, policy in general is messed up, and how long it takes someone to, come over here legally and things like that. In your opinion, does it need some sort of reform?
Our immigration policy?
Specifically talking about, asylum, things like that, getting green cards to come over here, how long it takes, those people over there trying to get in here legally instead of crossing the border illegally.
Yeah, look, I think, well, first of all, I think our asylum policies have been exploited and taken advantage of on a massive scale, right? I think that needs to stop. We've heard all these accounts of illegal aliens coming into this country with prepared written statements in their language on how to say all the right things to qualify for asylum. That's completely wrong. That needs to stop. But I think that at the same time, there are highly skilled immigrants who want to come to this country who go through extraordinarily difficult processes to come here. I tell the story. I had a cousin who wanted to marry a nice Canadian girl when I was younger, and what she had to go through to get her green card and come here legally was ridiculous. It took her years. She couldn't even come to America, even to visit him, while for the years that her application was in process. I think we need to fix our own system while making it easier for highly skilled migrants to come live and work here, while at the same time, making it harder for people to come in here illegally.
And then another top issue that we're seeing on the national scale is the war over in Israel. What are your thoughts, on it as a whole, but also should Congress be acting? Should they be doing things differently? I know a lot of it has to do with the president, but do you feel Congress should be doing anything?
Well, I always get a little concerned when people start calling for the government to, quote, do something, right? Because our government has a very bad habit of writing laws and trying to solve one problem but creating an even bigger one. And there's no better example than what just happened with this anti-Semitism bill that we saw a few days ago that the House, including my opponent Randy Feenstra, voted for. And like a lot of bills, it starts with noble intentions, right? Everybody's appalled by all the anti-Semitic speech and all of the violence on our college campuses right now. That all needs to stop. There's no place for that in our society. But the House passed a bill that basically outsources the definition of what anti-Semitism is to a multinational organization somewhere, I think based in Sweden, that we don't maintain control of what defines anti-Semitism in our own country, let our own government do it. And that particular organization's definition, if you look at their website, currently states that any mention of the Jews killing Jesus is anti-Semitism. Which, if that's true, then there are chapters in the Bible, right, the Christian Bible that specifically say that, right, the Book of Acts, the Book of 1 Thessalonians. So now the House has apparently passed a bill that would that elevate the interest of other religions over Christianity, which the Constitution specifically provides for equal protection under the law. This bill was unconstitutional before it was even signed. It's just an example of really bad legislation, which is what happens when you allow the government to do something. I would rather see our cities and our college campuses actually, have the moral and moral courage to start enforcing the law. Let's start expelling some of these students that are acting like fools and prosecuting people that are engaging in violent acts. Right? Certainly, if somebody's engaged in like saying things that are hateful to another religion, there's no place for that. I support what Florida's doing by expelling students that do that. I think it's the right move.
And then kind of part of this whole thing we saw was the war in Ukraine, between Ukraine and Russia. And we saw Congress, Republicans not wanting to send more money over there, but then holding up some immigration pieces. Do you think it's right to send money to help Ukraine over there, or is it something that should kind of be left up to themselves?
Yeah, I don't believe that our funding, certainly $60+ billion to Ukraine puts America first. It doesn't prioritize American interests, because there's no argument that can be made that funding Ukraine benefits the American people. It might benefit special interests, in Washington and in certain industries, but it doesn't prioritize the interests of the taxpayers who fund it. So I fully support the right, of Ukraine or Israel to defend themselves, but I don't believe that sending foreign aid to another country, particularly when we're $34 trillion in debt, is a good national strategy.
And so just to be clear, you don't think we should send anything to Israel as well?
No, I fully support Israel's right to defend itself. I've been to Israel many times, and I think it's an amazing place, but obviously with a rich history that has a special place in the heart of every Christian. At the same time, Israel is a sovereign state, and they have every right to defend themselves, as well they should. But I don't believe that certainly sending billions of dollars of foreign aid, when oftentimes the Israeli government isn't even asking us for aid, is a good strategy that prioritizes American interests.
So one of the other issues that's always popping up is abortion. We saw Roe v. Wade get overturned, leaving it up to the states to kind of handle how they want to go forward with it. We have seen, some Republicans and Democrats saying they want to ban it, they don't want to ban it at the federal level.
Right.
If you're in Congress, what are you voting for?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm a pro-life absolutist. I do believe that life begins at conception, and I believe that the Declaration of Independence calls for the protection of life, calls for the government to protect that life, and therefore I do think the federal government has a role in protecting the unborn child, and I would never support any federal funding for abortions at all. I do believe that abortion, it's a violent act, and therefore should be regulated by the states. We fought this battle with undoing Roe v. Wade during the Trump administration, and pushed that decision down to the states where I think it belongs. If there were a bill to come to the House floor that got the federal government involved in protecting unborn life, I would support it. But for the moment, I think we're in the right place by allowing the states to regulate themselves.
Pretty big election coming up here in November. Where do you kind of stand in supporting Trump? I know you said you have Vivek Ramaswamy endorsing you. Where do you kind of stand with all of that?
Yeah, look, I voted for President Trump in 2016 and 2020, and I'll certainly support him again. I think that he's the leader that we need in this election cycle, certainly over anything else that is offered in opposition. So, yeah, I'm very grateful for Vivek Ramaswamy's endorsement. I've got a lot of respect for him and for his positions on all the big issues, and like him, I'll be supporting President Trump.
And so kind of along those lines, we saw a lot of chaos for the House Speaker a couple of months ago with Mike Johnson and different things like that. Was that the right way to handle it, and would you have done anything differently?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't believe that Speaker Johnson has done a great job of defending his conservative values since he took the job. It seems like he keeps giving ground to the left and receiving nothing in return, as we saw with I think the FISA bill, or this bill that enabled the U.S. government to continue spying on U.S. citizens without a warrant. I think that was the last straw for a lot of people. Certainly, the debt ceiling bill wasn't great either, right? Because there were no concessions that Speaker Johnson received, for example, to compel the Biden White House to close the border, which is, as we talked about, is another important issue. At the same time, look, we've already pushed out Kevin McCarthy last year, which I believe was richly deserved. I don't believe that he was executing the office well, but I don't think it's good politics to do that twice in one congressional cycle. I think that we chose to put Mike Johnson in the Speaker's chair last year, and I think we need to see that through until after the next election.
And then just my last thing, if you are elected, how do you plan to, work with the other party?
Yeah, I think we have to, right? It's all well and good in the primary cycle, to go out and talk to the base, but we as everyone knows, Congress is almost evenly split down the middle, so we have to work with the other aisle to get anything done. I'll give you a great example, right? If when I win the Republican primary here, my Democratic opponent here in Iowa's 4th District and I actually see eye to eye on a couple of issues, right? One example is eminent domain with the carbon capture pipelines. I actually agree with him and not with my Republican opponent, which says a lot about my Republican opponent, in my opinion. But I think that that's one great example of where I would absolutely work with the Democrats, right, on issues that elevate the interest of big business over the American people, the private landowner. Those are the issues that the Democratic Party is supposed to stand for, and certainly the Republican Party is supposed to look out for the constitutional rights of their constituents as well. It's sad to see that they're not currently doing that here in Iowa, but that is one example. I don't see eye to eye with the Democrats on everything, probably not even most things, but on this one I do.
Awesome. Anything else you'd like to add?
Only that I hope all of your listeners in Iowa's 4th District come out to vote in the primary, the Republican primary, on June 4th.